हे होऊ दे ना, आता ते सगळं दिसेल, ते चालू सगळं दिसेल ना, आणि इकडे चेंजेस ते सगळं दिसेल म्हणलं. टीचर्स 10B मध्ये. थँक्यू सर. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another session of Standard 9 Science and Technology YouTube Live. We are going to talk about lesson number 17, Introduction to Biotechnology, right? Last session, we had talked about the various animal tissues, right? We talked about the animal tissues, different types of animal tissues, and their location, their structure, their functions, and we also saw how the hierarchy of organization helps in building up the body of organism, right? Okay, so we are heading up to the next topic today. Let us continue. I am Mrs. Priya Mohorkar from SV Union High School and Junior College, Pune, Maharashtra, India. Welcome all. And in this session, that is session 2, we are going to talk about plant tissues. Okay, you already know that we are going to see 4 different topics under this chapter. That is lesson number 17, Introduction to Biotechnology. We are going to look into the subtopics tissues, in which we have already studied animal tissues, and today we are going to do plant tissues. Whereas further we'll be learning about tissue culture, agritourism, and agribusiness. So last session we saw what are things and how they are classified. We saw the things are classified into non-living things and living things. Those who do not perform, which do not perform any work or function on their own are non-living things, and those who perform lots of work or functions on their own, like various life processes like growth, respiration, nutrition, excretion, circulation, sensitivity, and reproduction. All those are living things, right? So we also saw some examples. We also we learned about the basic components of those things. The non-living things are made up of bricks, cement and concrete, and iron rods or bars, whereas living things are made up of cells, which are the structural and functional unit of living things, along with fluids and skeleton, which forms all these 3 things, all these 3 structures form the body of an organism, right? As the book contains basically the letters of an alphabet, which are grouped together to form words. The words are grouped together to form sentences. The sentences forms paragraph of the lessons, and many different lessons together form the textbook, right? The same way we also saw the hierarchy of organization of an organism, where cell is the basic structural and functional unit of the organism. When cells are grouped together, they form what is called as tissues, right? That is, different types of cells form different types of tissues, okay, to perform different functions. Accordingly, the tissues are also grouped together. Different types of tissues are grouped together to form what are called as organ. And different organs like of course liver, stomach, intestines, okay, the esophagus, all these different organs which are formed of different tissues form the are arranged actually together sequentially in the form of an organ system, right? For example, the digestive system we saw, right? Now, various organ systems in this manner are grouped together, arranged properly inside the body cavity of an organism. Thus, an organism is formed. That is the hierarchy of organization of organism we saw. We also saw the organisms are of two basic types. One is a unicellular and others are multicellular. Unicellular are all single cell organisms where all the life processes, all the functions are performed by various organelles of that cell, that is small organs of the cell. Whereas in multicellular organisms, which are many celled organisms, they are complex in structure and function, where all the functions are carried out by group of cells which are organized as a tissue. The tissues are organized as organs. Sorry, various organs are arranged in an organ system. Sorry. So in the last session, we talked about tissue, a group of cells having the same origin, same structure, and same function is called as a tissue, right? All the functions of the body occur with full efficiency only because of the specific organization of the cells and their division of labor, division of work, that is division of different functions. Okay, right. Now we also saw the basic two types of tissues, which are the simple tissue and the complex tissue. Simple tissues are made up of only one type of cells, right? And complex tissues are made up of different types of cells, or we can say that they are made up of more than one type of cells. Okay, and of course we saw the various types of animal tissues again. You all know there are four main types of animal tissues. They are the epithelial tissue, the connective tissue, the muscular tissue, and the nervous tissue. We saw that the epithelial tissue are generally found are located on the surface of various organs, and of course the skin is a epithelial tissue. We also saw different types of epithelial tissues, which are squamous epithelium, of course, the squamous epithelium, the stratified epithelium, the glandular epithelium, the columnar epithelium, and ciliated epithelium, and the cuboidal epithelium. These are the types of epithelial tissues. We learned the structure, function, and location of these tissues last session. Types of connective tissues we saw. Connective tissues are those which actually connect various organs in our body. And we also saw the types of connective tissues, which are blood, lymph, areolar tissue, the adipose tissue, the cartilage, the bones, the tendons, and the ligaments, right? Next, we also learnt about the location, structure, and function of muscular tissues, right? Muscles which help in locomotion, in movements, right? They are basically made up of contractile proteins, we learnt. We also saw the different types of muscular tissues, which are the striated muscles, we saw the non-striated muscles, as well as the cardiac muscles. We saw that these different types of muscles differ in their structure, location, and their functions, right? We also saw that diaphragm is a non-voluntary or involuntary muscle, type of muscle, which helps in respiration, life process, right? Okay, mainly the breathing, exchange of gases, the breathing process, right? Next, we also saw the the nervous tissue that forms the nervous system, right, which helps in respond to stimulus. Of course, we can come to know about and sense about various objects and whatever is going on around us in our surroundings. So we also saw the different types of nervous tissue, which are the neurons and the neuroglia, right? Neurons are the basic structural and functional unit of the nervous system, which helps in actually transfer of stimuli from the synaptic and region through the synaptic region from the end plate of the axon nerve, that is a nerve fiber, into the cell body, and through dendrites pass on the stimulus to the next and adjacent neurons. We also learned that the neuroglia are of supportive type of cells. Okay, right. So we altogether we saw various types of animal tissues. So animal tissues are classified into 4 types. They are the epithelial tissue, the muscular tissue, the connective tissue, and the nervous or the neural tissue. Epithelial tissue: simple squamous epithelium, stratified squamous epithelium, columnar epithelium, ciliated columnar epithelium, the cuboidal epithelium, and the glandular epithelium we saw, right? Whereas the muscular tissues are of 3 types: striated muscles, non-striated muscles, cardiac muscles. The striated muscles are also called as voluntary muscles, non-striated muscles are also called as involuntary muscles, and the cardiac muscles are the muscles that make up the heart. Okay, so we have learned about all these different types of muscular tissue also. Next, the connective tissue. Connective tissue are of different types. They are areolar, adipose, fibrous tissues, cartilage, bone, and blood and the lymph, which are the fluid connective tissues. So all these we learned about the connective tissues. We learned about nervous tissue or the neural tissue that forms a neural nervous system of our body, and we also learned about the neurons and the neuroglia, the types of nervous tissue. Okay, today we are going to start with the plants, the hierarchy of organization in plants. We saw the hierarchy of organization in general, or in organisms in general. Today let us see the hierarchy of organization in plants. Now, even plants are living things. They are living organisms, and they are also made up of basic structural and functional unit called as the cell. We all know that plant cell differ from animal cell in certain aspects. Mainly, they differ in being sedentary, isn't it? The plants are actually sedentary. That is, they are fixed to the soil. They will not be able to move from one place to other place. So locomotion is absent. So they are non-motile. But we are not talking about the microorganisms. But here we are talking about the advanced higher plants, which are sedentary in nature, and they have the cells which are arranged, which has a organization to give mainly the support, mechanical support, because they are sedentary. Okay, right, and that is why they are sedentary. Right, so plant cells differ from animal cells in certain ways. Basically, let me tell you, plant cell shows the presence of cell wall outside the plasma membrane or the cell membrane. Okay, whereas they also contain the vacuoles, which are which plays a very important role in the plant cell and its functions. Right, and also the green plants contains a special organelle called as chloroplast with green color pigments called chlorophyll pigments that help in the process called photosynthesis so as to prepare their own food. Okay, so plants can prepare their own food because of the presence of chlorophyll. So these chlorophyll pigments are found in chloroplast. That is why the plants, certain parts of the plants are green in color. Okay, yes, so that makes them basically these things make the plants different from animals. Okay, because the cells are different in certain forms. But most of the life processes most of the functions take place in a similar manner. Okay. So let us see the hierarchy of organization in plants, how the plants organize themselves for various functions, and what is the hierarchy. Let us see. As I told you, the plants are basically made up of the structural and functional units called as the cell. So here I will call it as plant cell because we are going to talk about plants, hierarchy of organization of plants. Okay, so plant cell also group together and they form various tissues, right? Different tissues of plants are actually organized in such a way to perform various functions, different functions. Okay, you can see how the cells of the plants are grouped together. You can very well see the outer outline or the boundary of each and every cell here. Can you see? Now this is a cell, single cell, along with other cells. If you consider, it has a boundary. Can you all see this boundary? This is you can see this under the microscope where larger cells can be seen, their outlines, that is the cell wall can be clearly seen. Okay, so you can see the well arranged group of cells. We call it as the tissues. So different cells combine together to form different tissues based on their functions. Okay, they get modified and get differentiated to form the tissues so as to perform different functions. The same way the tissues, different types of tissues, they also undergo a teamwork. Okay, they work in groups and they actually form the organs. There are different types of organs even in plants. Different types of organs, yes. You have the leaves, the stem and the branches. Can you see? Okay, if it is going to be a tree, we call it as the trunk and large branches you can see. Okay, the organs called as roots are also present, but they are of course not visible because they are found under the ground mostly. Okay, because there are exceptions to it also. Now these are various organs. These are various organs of the plant. They arrange together to form an organ system. Okay. Now here you can see the organ system, which is the root system. The plant shows basically two different types of organ systems. One is the root system and the other one is the shoot system. Okay, the root system is made up of different roots. Can you see here? Which are basically under the ground, under the soil. Okay, they are located under the soil. So they are not visible outward. Whereas the shoot system, which is found above the soil, can be seen, and it is made up of various parts like various organs like the leaf, the branches, the stem, okay, the tip. Of course, it also produces the floral parts like the flower, which gets converted into fruits and seeds after fertilization. Okay, right. Now all these parts are of the shoot system. So the root system and the shoot system are two main organ systems of the plant, which together form the whole plant body of the plant body, which we call it as organism. So here you can see the whole organism, the whole plant with the shoot system and the root system below the soil. Okay, right. So this is the plant organism. It's a living organism, and we are going to talk about the plant tissues next. Okay, so you can see how the plants are organized and their hierarchy is the same as we have seen for generally for organisms. That is, a cell grouped together to form a tissue, different tissues grouped together according to their functions to form organs. Organs are sequentially arranged in an organ system, and organ system, different organ system are together form the organism, right? And this organism here we term it as plant. Is that clear? Right, let us see the plant tissues. So the plants, of course, are made up of basically cells. Cells grouped together to form tissues. In plants, we call them as plant tissues. Okay. Now, plant tissues are categorized broadly into three tissue systems. Can you see this? Three tissue systems. So, tissues also form systems. Let us see what are those. The epidermis, the ground tissue, and the vascular tissue. So plant tissues are classified into three basic systems, tissue systems. They are the epidermis. Epidermis is also called as the surface tissue. The ground tissue, which is found inside the under the epidermis or towards inside the epidermis, and the vascular tissue, most probably which form the center of the plant organism. Okay, so these three tissues form the basic tissue systems of a plant. We are going to talk, let us see what is epidermis. The cells which form the outer surface of the leaves and the young plant body of the young plant body is called as the epidermis. Okay, the ground tissue contains the cells that form the inner parts of the stem and the branches of the plant. Okay, along of course with the leaves. Whereas the vascular tissue are the primary conducting tissues. Conducting tissues, yes, they conduct materials like water, mineral salts, water along with mineral salts and food. Okay, so the primary conducting components of vascular tissue are the xylem, which are called as the water conducting tissues, and the phloem, which are called as the food conducting tissues. Okay, so epidermis, the surface tissue, ground tissue, that is the inner parts of the plant, forming the inner parts of the plant, and the vascular tissue, which are the conducting tissues. Okay, right. So we are going to talk in detail about all these three tissue systems in brief. Okay. Before we start, can you recall what is the main difference between the growth of animals and plants? Have you ever thought about it? Yes, you have learned about it, so you can recall. Actually, if you see the growth in animals, it is limited. Okay, so for example, say take a cat, a dog, it grows to certain height, shape and size, and after that you don't find any kind of vertical growth. Once it reaches the adulthood, it is the animal attains adulthood, and later the animal body may start entering into what is called as the aging, senescence. Okay, but there won't be any further vertical growth, whereas so it is the growth is limited. Okay, limited to maybe horizontal growth, whereas the growth in plants is always unlimited. That is, if you cut a tree, just think a tree is cut down. Okay, after few days, maybe once it faces a favorable conditions, it starts producing small branchlets. Have you ever seen that? Why? Because the portion, the part of the plant which is not visible above the ground, above the soil, that is the root system, they still are there. Okay, you cut down the shoot system of the plant, doesn't matter, the root system is still there, holding the life in it, and is going to flourish again through small branchlets, right, that develops from the axillary buds. small growth buds, and the tree starts growing again. So the growth actually is unlimited in plants. Okay, until unless it is completely eradicated, the plant keeps on growing. So we say that we can say that the growth in plants is unlimited. Got it, all of you? So this is the main difference between the growth of plants and animals. Why does the growth of a plant occur only at specific parts? Yes, you must have seen that the plant grows at certain points, like at the tip of the stem, tip of the roots. They show the growth. But why does this happen? They occur at only specific parts. Actually, there are certain special growth tissues, okay, which are called as the meristematic tissues. These tissues are present at the at specific parts of the plant body. That is why the growth occurs at specific parts of the plant. Okay, so that is the reason. So there are the growth tissues which are called meristematic tissues. Which tissues? The meristematic tissues. These tissues help in the growth of the plant, whether it is in the stem or the roots, the branches or the leaves. Any part of the plant grows only because of these special growth tissues called as the meristematic tissues. Now, let us talk about these meristematic tissues. Okay, the cells of meristematic tissue contain thick cytoplasm. They are actually these meristematic tissues are generally located, let me tell you, located at the tips of the stem, tips of the roots, even in the buds, okay, and the axils of the leaves, even the of course they are found in the leaves, right? So they help in the growth of the plant parts. Now the cells present in this meristematic tissue, they contain thick cytoplasm and a conspicuous nucleus, very clear, very conspicuous nucleus, and the cells contain thin cell wall. The cell wall are thin, okay, when compared to other tissues of the plant, and they are all compactly packed together, compactly packed, smaller in size, right? And of course vacuoles, which are a very conspicuous part of the cell, plant cell, actually are absent. Usually vacuoles are absent in meristematic tissues. If you see the cells, they are very active cells, okay, and they divide rapidly. So the division of the cells takes place very rapidly, and that is how the growth occurs, okay. Even though they are highly active, they are quiescent. That is, quietly they do continue dividing rapidly. Even though they are highly active, you don't see them, or the growth is not visible by a naked eyes, but we can suddenly see the effect of the growth, okay. That is, we see the increase in length of the stem, increase in the length of the roots. The same way we can see that small leaf-like structures start becoming larger leaves. They grow. We see suddenly the plant height increases. We see sudden, it is not sudden, it is gradually the plant height increases. We see gradually that during the flowering season, the plant flowers, if it is a flowering plant, okay, you can see the flowers growing from bud to the flowers, right? And then you also see the flowers getting converted into fruits and seeds, isn't it? So all these things happen because of these quietly, rapidly dividing and highly active meristematic cells. So what is the basic function of these meristematic cells? To bring about the plant growth, okay, that actually results in unlimited growth of plants. So here you can see a picture where the tip of the, this is the tip of the stem. Now, this part is called as the apex or the apical part of the stem. In certain plants, it also has a apical cell that undergoes division and forms a meristematic tissue. The meristematic tissue is going to continue growing, dividing and growing. Okay, so the growth of the plant depends on the meristematic tissues, right? Let us see the different types of meristematic tissues. Now, according to the location, we are going to see the three different types of meristematic tissues. So, meristematic tissues are classified into three types based on their location. We are not talking about other criteria. We are going to talk about according to the location, the place where the meristematic tissues are present. There are three types of meristematic tissues. Okay, let us see. They are the apical meristematic tissues, the intercalary meristematic tissues, and the lateral meristematic tissues. So we term them apical meristem, intercalary meristem, and lateral meristem. Apical meristem. Apical meristem, you can see this is the apical meristem here. The apical meristem is generally found at the tip of the plant body. Tips, which are the tips? The stem tip, the branch tip, the root tip, right? The leaf tip. All these plant parts, the tips of the plant parts, they contain the apical meristem. Whereas the intercalary, the word itself tells you, inter means in between. Okay, in between the calcareous regions, which are those, the regions where the leaves or the branches arise. Okay, so where do the leaves and the branches arise? Where do the leaves arise? In the apical region of the stem. If you could talk about the stem, it is actually the region where the nodes are. Now, where are the nodes? Now, in the stem, there are two main regions. One is the node where the leaves arise. So, this is the node, okay, where this leaf arise, right? And in between these two nodes, you have a region. Now, this region is actually the region between two nodes. For example, this region is a region between two nodes, for example. In that case, this region is called as the internode. So in a stem, you have two regions. One is the nodal region. Okay, we term it as node, and the internodal region. Inter refers to in between. In between two nodes, you have a nodal region. Now, this nodal region, you can see a leaf has originated here. Okay, it is a diagrammatic representation, students. So I hope you understand this. That is the there you find the intercalary meristem. We are going to talk about it little in brief, little later. Okay, whereas the lateral, the term lateral refers to side. So here you can see on the sides of the stem or maybe the root, whichever plant part it is present, the lateral meristem is found on the sides of the plant parts, like stem and the roots and the branches. Okay, so there are three basic types. There are three different types of meristematic tissues based on location. One is apical meristem, second is the intercalary meristem, and third is the lateral meristem. Let us talk about the types of meristematic tissues now. Okay, now more in detail. Come on, let us see what is the location of these different types of meristematic tissues. The apical meristem, I told you, apical refers to the apex, the tip of the plant parts. So apical meristem is found generally located at the tip of the root and the stem. Okay, the main function of this meristem, apical meristem, is to increase the length of the root and the stem. So it helps in increasing the vertical height, the vertical growth of the plant takes place because of this apical meristem. Okay, whereas the intercalary meristem is located at the base of the petiole of leaves and of branches. That is where they actually produce, where the leaves are produced, where the branches arises. At that place you find the intercalary meristem. Then what is the function of this intercalary meristem? It helps in the growth of the branches, formation of leaves, and of course even the flowers. Okay, whereas the lateral meristem is actually located on the sides, lateral sides of the root and the stem. It helps in increasing the girth, that is the diameter, the thickness of the plant part, whether it might be root or it might be stem. So the girth of the root and the stem increases only because of this lateral meristem. So here you can see the apical meristem, the of course the this is the intercalary meristem, and the lateral meristem. Now, so that is how the meristematic, that is where the meristematic tissues are located. Now, so you can see here the apical meristem, which forms the apex of the, here in this picture you can see the apex of the stem. Okay, so meristem is found just below the apex, the tip of the stem. Of course, just below the tip of the stem you have the apical meristem that helps in the vertical growth of the stem. Whereas the intercalary meristem, you can see here at the place where the leaves grow, the growth from the base of the nodes. Okay, from the base of the nodes or base of the, here you can see the grass leaf that is being that arises from the node. So the base of the grass leaf or just above the node, in this region the intercalary meristem is present. Are you able to follow now? Simple pictures to make you understand. And the lateral meristem, here you can see the lateral meristem is found along with the conducting tissues, the xylem, which are the water conducting tissues I told you, and the phloem, which are the food conducting tissues. We are going to learn about them a little later, okay, in this session. The lateral meristem consists of the special tissue called as the cambium tissue. I'm sorry, just give me a minute. Okay, the cambium tissue. Now this cambium tissue helps in growth of the plant tissues on the side, in the sideways. Can you see the arrowheads being shown? Sideways the growth of this tissues continues when the cells divide rapidly. Okay, it increases the thickness of the stem. Got it, all of you? Okay, now so these are the different types of meristematic tissues: the apical meristem, the intercalary meristem, and the lateral meristem. Now let us just see the second type of the tissues called as the permanent tissues. So meristematic tissues help in plant growth, whereas these permanent tissues are going to give the full mechanical support and other life processes taking place in these tissues which are permanent. Now why that termed as permanent? Because after their growth is complete, the new cells formed by the division of meristematic tissue, these cells lose their ability to divide. Okay, and then they start to perform a specific function at specific place. That is, they start showing some changes in their structure, some modifications take place, and these cells start changing their shape and structure according to their function wherever they are located. Now this process is called as differentiation process, where the cells, the simple newly divided cells, start undergoing changes, modifies into different types of tissues which are different in shape, size, and structure. Accordingly they perform the functions. Okay, so the process is called as differentiation. So cells acquire a specific structure, shape and location permanently, and they perform a specific function by the process of differentiation. So this process of modification in the structure of the cell for a specific function is called differentiation. But sometimes the cells may undergo they may reverse this differentiation. We call it as de-differentiation. Or they may again, after differentiation, may again undergo changes and modify more and more to form de-differentiated cells. Now, or sometimes they also undergo changes in such a way that they get differentiated. So the differentiation process takes place in the new cells that are formed, okay, after cell division in the meristematic tissues. So these tissues, because they attain a permanent location, they attain specific structure, shape, size and structure for specific function. So they are called as permanent tissues. Those permanent tissues are formed from these differentiated cells. Okay, so when the permanent tissues are formed, these permanent tissues actually are categorized into simple and complex types. The simple permanent tissues are made up of only one type of cells, simple tissues, okay, but they are permanent tissues. So we call them as simple permanent tissues, which are made up of only one type of cells, whereas the complex permanent tissue is the other type of permanent tissue which are made up of more than one type of cells, right? Let us see the simple permanent tissues types. The simple permanent tissues are basically of three different types. One is the parenchyma tissue. Let us talk about parenchyma tissue first. Okay, these the cells, if you see the cells are all living cells, contain nucleus, but they have thin cell wall and intercellular spaces. So here you can see the intercellular spaces around that are formed because of the adjacent cells grouped together, right? They are all intercellular spaces. And these cells are located in all the parts of root, stem, leaves, flowers, and fruits and seeds. The main function of this tissue is the support. It gives mechanical support. It also helps in storage of food, and it helps in filling up the vacant places. Wherever there is hollowness, the parenchyma tissues are going to fill in that particular space. Now, when we talk about its subtypes a little later, but let me tell you the subtypes of parenchyma cells. The Sclerenchyma tissue, which is found in the leaves and helps in performing photosynthesis, whereas another type is the Erenchyma tissue, which helps aquatic plants, leaves and stem to float on the water. So here you can see the parenchyma tissue, which are very simple living cells with thin cell wall. The cell wall are thin here, okay. That is it. The next type are the subtype of the parenchyma tissues. So I just told you about the Sclerenchyma. Sclerenchyma. Now, chlorine refers to the presence of green color pigment called chlorophyll. So these cells contain many chloroplasts and with the green color pigment. That's why the part in which they are found, like the leaves, wherever these Sclerenchyma tissues are present, that part looks green in color, and they perform photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is a process in which the plants prepare their own food using carbon dioxide, water, sun in the presence of sunlight, and this green color pigment called chlorophyll, right? So these Sclerenchyma tissues, you can see here, contain lots of chloroplasts, and that is why they are green in color. The next subtype of parenchyma is when the cells contain many air cavities. You can see the tissues with many air cavities. They are present in the aquatic plants, right? Like the lotus plant, okay. The stem here, you can see the stem, the petiole of the lotus, where you can see large air cavities. These air cavities gives buoyancy to the plant and helps in floating on water. Okay, so Aerenchyma, you can see these are all the air cavities. These are the air cavities which are formed by the Aerenchyma tissues. So Sclerenchyma and Aerenchyma are two subtypes of the parenchyma tissues. Let us talk about the Collenchyma tissue. Now, the collenchyma tissue are those tissue which are slightly differentiated parenchyma tissue. What kind of differentiation? Actually, the cells are living cells. Of course, they contain nucleus and cytoplasm covered with the cell wall. Here, they are mostly elongated living cells with the thick cell wall, thickened cell wall. But where? How thick? Now, the thickening, the cell wall thickenings are actually found at the corners of the cells, and that is due to the deposition of cellulose and pectin substances. Okay, that is why you can see here the corners of the cells are thickened. Okay, and of course they have large vacuoles. The cell wall seems to be very large, very thick then, and that is why these are collenchyma tissues. Colon refers to thickened walls, okay, strong walls. Now, they are located generally at the base of the leaf petiole, base in the branches of the branches as well as the stem of the plant. The main function is mechanical support. These tissues gives mechanical support, but still they also are flexible enough to help in movements. Suppose the wind blows, the leaf moves, right? The leaves move, the flowers may show a slight motion. Now that is because of the flexible collenchyma tissues. Okay, right. Now these these parenchyma again may show further differentiation, and differentiated cells called sclerenchyma tissues form the permanent tissues here. Now, these sclerenchyma, if you see, they are mostly dead tissues. That is, they do not contain cytoplasm nor the nucleus. They actually lose the nucleus and the cytoplasm, and they become dead tissues. Okay, as they mature. Now, these tissues, actually, if you see the structure of these cells, they are all cells with tapering ends. Now, if the sclerenchyma tissue show tapering ends, then they are called as fibers. They are sclerenchyma fibers. Okay, you can see the elongated cells which have a very broad lumen. You can see that in the cross section, the lumen of the cell, the center of the cell is broad and it is empty, whereas the cell walls are very thick. Okay, now these are the fibers. They are called sclerenchyma fibers. They are dead cells and they have tapering ends. The cell wall contains mainly lignin, okay, which is a which forms a very thick cell wall. These sclerenchyma tissues may also form stone cells, the stone-like cells. They are called as scleroids. Okay, they are the stone cells. Now, these scleroids, if you see, they are found located in very thickened, hard stone-like structures like that of the internal part of the coconut. Okay, the one which you break, you need to break them. Even some nut shells are made up of these sclerenchyma tissues. Okay, mainly the stone cells. So it is very hard for these parts to break, right? So they are very protective in function. They give strength. The main function of these sclerenchyma tissues are that they give strength and rigidity, hardness to the parts of those plant, to the parts of the plant. So the sclerenchyma tissue, you can see with thick cell wall, they might be fibrous, long, elongated, or they might be stone-like, called as scleroids. Okay, right. Let us talk about the surface tissue now. That is the epidermis. Epidermis. Epi refers to upper and derma means the covering, right? Epidermis is the surface tissue found on the surface of the leaves, the stem and the roots, every part of the plant body. Like skin is covered, skin is the outermost covering of human beings and other animals the same way. Surface tissue is the covering of the whole plant. If you see in this leaf, you can see the surface tissue. If you just observe the surface tissue, the epidermis is this, the containing barrel-shaped cells. Okay, these cells are covered with a special type of wax containing substance called as the cuticle. Now you can see the epidermis in the upper side of this leaf, upper side, or we call it as the adaxial side, and the lower side we call it as the lower epidermis. The lower epidermis has special type of cells called as the guard cells, which are kidney-shaped cells, and they actually enclose a small opening called as the stomata. Okay, you can see this stomata here. This is the opening of the opening that is guarded by these two kidney-shaped guard cells. Okay, so the guard cells help in opening and closing of the small pore, the stomata. So stoma open due to the movement of the guard cells, and they close. But when does this happen? During the exchange of gases, okay, in plants. That takes place through these stomata. The stomata are generally found in the lower side or the abaxial side of the leaves. Okay, right. So the surface tissue, epidermis, is explained. I've explained the epidermis of the leaves here. Next, let us talk about the complex permanent tissues. The complex permanent tissues are called as those tissues which are made up of more than one type of tissue, one type of cells that perform different functions also, but they are grouped together, like the vascular tissues, the conducting tissues. There are two types of conducting tissues. One is the xylem, which are the water conducting tissues, and the phloem, which are the food conducting tissues. Here you can see the xylem tissues, the water conducting tissues. These tissues generally consist of thick-walled, and most of the cells are dead cells. That is, they don't contain cytoplasm nor the nucleus. They only contain dry lumen surrounded by the cell wall, very thickened cell wall. Okay, they are made up of four different types of tissues. They are the tracheids, the xylem tracheids, the xylem vessels, and the xylem fibers, along with xylem parenchyma. Now, the xylem tracheids, xylem vessels, and xylem fibers are the dead cells, whereas xylem parenchyma tissue is a living tissue there. Okay, you can see the vessels, xylem vessels, which are actually the main water conducting tissues. Okay, which are arranged like the cells are arranged one above the other, like as if they are stacked. Okay, one above the other, forming a continuous pipeline like structure. So these conduct water and mineral salts from the roots to the other parts of the plant. Okay, you can see the tracheids also. The tracheids are slightly thinner cells, elements that also form thin pipelines which conduct the water and mineral salts. The fibers are the Sclerenchyma fibers associated with these xylem tissues, and xylem parenchyma help in storing and storing food, which are associated with the xylem conducting tissues. Okay, the main function of xylem is to conduct water and mineral salts through the interconnected tube-like xylem vessels and xylem tracheids. They conduct water and minerals in the upward direction from the roots to the other parts of the plant. The xylem, here you can see the different types of xylem, the tracheids, the vessels, the xylem fibers, and the xylem parenchyma together. Okay. The another type of complex permanent tissues are the phloem tissues, which are the food conducting tissues. They conduct food, okay. But the conduction of food is from the leaves, which are the green part of the plant, where the food is being prepared by the process of photosynthesis. So food is being conducted from the leaves to other parts of the plant. If you see the cells actually consist of cytoplasm, and they are all living cells. They contain the phloem is made up of 4 different types of tissues: the sieve tubes, the companion cells, the phloem parenchyma, and the phloem fibers. Phloem fibers are the Sclerenchyma fibers associated with phloem. They are all dead cells. The sieve tubes, companion cells, and the phloem parenchyma are all living cells. So here you can see how they are arranged. The parenchyma, which contains the nucleus, and of course the vacuole and cytoplasm here, they are all living cells. Here you can see the sieve tubes arranged one above the other, having the sieve plate. The sieve plate is like a sieve through which the food materials pass, okay, from one element to the other element, from one part of the plant to the other part of the plant. Now, the main function of the tubes are they are joined together with each other, and they conduct sugar and amino acids from leaves to various parts in the upward as well as in the downward direction. Is that clear, all of you? Now the phloem, you can see here the 4 different types of phloem cells. The sieve tubes, the companion cells, the phloem parenchyma, and the phloem fibers associated with the phloem. The sieve tubes have special cross walls like a sieve, so it is called a sieve plate. So through which the food materials are transferred. Okay, so let us have a quick look how the plant tissues are arranged in the stem. Now this is a monocot stem, the main stem. Transverse section, you can see the vascular tissues. These are the vascular tissues. They are all arranged inside this ground tissue covered with a surface tissue called epidermis, right? So vascular tissues, you can see the skeleton, the skull shaped vascular tissue here, showing the xylem vessels and tracheids here, along with the phloem tissue here. Those fibers are associated with xylem and phloem. Whereas the ground tissue is made up of mainly parenchyma tissue, and you can see the surface tissue, the epidermis here. Just under the epidermis, you have the hypodermis along with Sclerenchyma tissues. Now, this is how the plant tissues are arranged in a dicot plant along, that is the dicot stem here. You can see the plant tissues arranged in a dicot stem. First, it was a monocot stem. Here, the main stem is a monocot stem, whereas in a dicot stem, you can see the epidermis, which covers the stem, okay, from all the sides. It's a surface tissue with epidermal hairs here. Of course, underlying tissue is the hypodermis and cortex made up of Sclerenchyma tissues mainly. And you can see the vascular bundles arranged in concentric rings. Okay, so each vascular bundle, you can see a small portion is enlarged here. You can see the vascular bundle here consists of the xylem, the phloem here, and in the center, in between the xylem and phloem, you have the meristematic tissues, the cambium. Can you see this clearly? Right. Whereas the outermost tissue is the surface tissue, the epidermis. Underlying the epidermis are the cortex region, which contains Sclerenchyma and parenchyma tissues arranged in this manner, and the center region of the stem is filled with the ground tissue, okay, which is made up of generally parenchyma tissues. If you see the leaves also show a particular arrangement. Here you can see the upper epidermis, that is the adaxial epidermis on the surface, on the top of the leaf. The lower epidermis found on the lower surface of the leaf with the stomata. You can see here, which are the small openings, the pores present for exchange of gases mainly. The vascular bundle is found here in the midrib region and the veins of the leaves. So if you see, this is the midrib region, the veins which are branched, you can see in the leaf here, picture here, where you can see the xylem and phloem arranged, okay, in the midrib region. So that helps in conduction of water and food. So that is all about how the plant tissues are arranged in stem, root, in stems and leaves I've shown you. Let us see a summary of the whole session today. We learnt about the plant tissues. Plant tissues are generally made up of two types of tissues, generally classified into two types: meristematic tissue, and that is the growth tissue, and the permanent tissue that actually is located permanently and does the permanent function, specific function. The meristematic tissues are classified into three types: the apical meristem, the lateral meristem, and the intercalary meristem, whereas the permanent tissue are again classified into two: the simple tissue and the complex tissue. The simple tissues are of three types: parenchyma, collenchyma, and sclerenchyma. Sorry. Whereas the complex tissues are of two types: the xylem, which are the water conducting tissues, and the phloem, which are the food conducting tissues. They are called as the vascular tissues because they form the vasculature of the plant. Thank you all of you for being with me in this live session. We will be continuing this chapter further in the next session, session number 3. Join me in that session, and good day. Have a good life.